Welcome to the Heartland Institute's 34th anniversary benefit dinner. Good evening. Thank you for being here. And quick question. How are you all feeling? Very good. Look around the room. What a tremendous turnout. Welcome to what will be an amazing evening to honor, yes, an amazing couple, and to celebrate that amazing, but oh so often in world history elusive, but amazing gift of freedom. We are meeting here this evening to celebrate the achievements of the Heartland Institute, to thank Heartland staff, volunteers, and friends for their tremendous work, and to recognize and thank the generous donors who make everything we do possible. But first things first. For half a dozen years, I served in Congress with Joe Walsh. Sometimes, unfortunately, Joe. Nah, just kidding. It was, we also served with Mike Pence. I remember serving with Mike Pence and others. And of course, Joe remembers the few times we had to suffer through President Barack Obama speaking 6 separate times in our house. And you know what? I've always wanted to say this. The state of the Heartland Institute is strong. Yay! And I will say it again in case the former president didn't hear this. The state of the Heartland Institute is indeed very strong. A few months ago, I was riding in an Uber in Denver, Colorado. It was a beautiful day, great weather, and the driver asked that typical question. What do you do for a living? Then with my staff, I thought about that. I said, you know what? I said, I'm in the freedom business. I'm in the freedom business. You know, as an aside, that response quickly turned into a discussion with this driver. He was talking about how his son, he was sacrificing greatly to put his son in a private Christian school. And he was hoping that one day his son, Stephen, would understand the greatness and the principles that built America. Friends, the Heartland Institute is in the freedom business. And we were founded in 1984 for that sole purpose, to preserve and expand individual freedom. And we do that every day in every state of the union, in our nation's capital, and often wherever the United Nations is meeting. We preserve, expand, and defend freedom by discovering, developing, and promoting free market solutions to social and economic problems. We are taking on, pushing back, and defeating the climate alarmists who seek to alarm our fellow Americans and indeed citizens around the world that global warming, wait a minute, or was it global cooling, or what? Wait a minute, is it global climate change? That somehow it will destroy us all. Unless we let Al Gore, Tom Steyer, or the folks totally take over our economy and the way of life. But I want to tell you, in state capital after state capital, at the Interior Department, the Energy Department, and the EPA, wait a minute. I served 6 years in Congress. I never thought I'd have a meeting with the EPA and say, hey, how can we help you out today? And that took place earlier this week, and that's great to see. But we're also working in state ballot initiatives in Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado, and Washington State. I've never met Tom Steyer, but I've been running a lot of videos about Tom Steyer and his failed California politics. And oh, by the way, later this year, the Heartland Institute will be in Poland and Germany. You know what? We are making and winning the argument that energy freedom is key to our economy and our way of life. The war on fossil fuels in America is over. Friends, we are winning on energy and the environment. Heartland is also taking on big government control of our health care. In state after state and in Washington, D.C., we are promoting and implementing free market solutions that put you back in charge of your health care. Not big insurance companies, not politicians, and thank God, not government bureaucrats. And earlier this week, I was in Washington meeting with the White House, meeting with the House and Senate, and with key freedom allies, fighting for implementation of right to try, and also fighting for personal freedom and quicker access to breakthrough drugs with a project we call Free to Choose Medicine, and it is taking hold. Friends, we are winning on health care. Heartland is also fighting the good fight for you on budget and taxes. In 2018, We help kill carbon dioxide taxes in 10 different states. We helped pass an anti-carbon tax resolution in Congress. We deep six dozens of other tax increases in state after state. We helped pass the massive tax reduction in Washington, D.C., and we assist hundreds of state legislators throughout the year as they hold the line on government spending. Speaking of which, by the way, in the last 10 months, 54%, or 3,500 state legislators across America have read an email by the Heartland Institute. 35%, and 70% of them tell us in surveys they read our newspapers, which are full of free market solutions and free market ideas that just drive the left crazy. Friends, we are winning on budget and taxes. And on constitutional reform and rolling back regulations in Washington, I believe we're making huge progress as well. Fewer regulations equals less government. And less government, we know, equals more freedom. Friends, the Heartland Institute is strong and getting stronger. And I'll tell you, it's quite amazing for me and humbling as well to show up at event after event, work on issue after issue, from Washington to Austin, from Denver to Atlanta, even in San Francisco. We have folks there and here again and again at the Heartland Institute is playing an instrumental role in the freedom business. But like Sir Isaac Newton observed many centuries ago, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. And in this case, their name is Joe and Diane. And we'll get back to that a little bit later. A little story about Joe, a couple of those, if I might, I guess I can. I'm up here behind the podium. When I was looking to take on this job, I was waiting for Joe Bass to give me a call back. And he wouldn't call me back, and it was a Monday. He finally called me back in the evening, and I said, well, Joe, I've been waiting on a call, and I want to hear what you guys are thinking. And I said, well, where were you today? I mean, you said you were in an airport, you were too busy talking. He was really sheepish. You could hardly hear him on the phone. He said, well, I was at the Rose Garden. Joe Bass in the Rose Garden. What's the world coming to? And why Joe Bass was there? That's when they announced the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement. That would not have happened. That would not have happened if it wasn't for Joe and Diane Bass and the Heartland Institute and the President of the United States that understands, actually, he was right in his 60-minute interview. He does understand a little bit of science. And I appreciate that, and whoever would have thought that. And by the way, about a year later to the day, I represented the Heartland Institute in the Rose Garden a second time, in which we were invited by the White House because he was signing the Right to Try bill, in which offers terminally ill folks an opportunity to tell the FDA, we want to save our own lives. That's fantastic. When I was visiting with one of our allies a couple months ago, and I walk in, the first thing he tells me, his name is John, he says, how did you get this job? I thought Joe Bass hated politicians. Now, the secret is I am a recovering politician after 20 years of doing that. So how does a recovering politician from Kansas end up as the president of the Heartland Institute? First, I must say, as a native-born Kansas farmer, that's what our family does. It makes sense, and I represented a congressional district that literally was in the heartland of America. That's where the geographic center of the United States. Serving as the Heartland president is a good fit. But really, how does that happen? I think it was a good thing. I think it was providential that I am here and have the opportunity. And then you roll back, when I first started in the state senate in January of 1997, I believe one of the first publications I ever read, and it was delivered, it just came in the mail, was something called School Reform News. And said, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. I see Herb Wahlberg out here. You probably wrote that edition, Herb, as a former chairman of the board. But I read that, and I realized across the nation, there are other state legislators, other folks that are looking for freedom solutions and freedom initiatives. And then they send me budget and tax news. Then they send me something else. And I began to read those things. And eventually, I began to serve on the legislative forum, as did dozens of other legislators across the country. And then somehow, I convinced some folks in Kansas to send me to Washington. And that was a couple 6 years. And that was a long 6 years, I might add, under the former president. But that's where I learned that the business of freedom starts at the Heartland Institute and other allies pushing and promoting and telling policymakers there are answers and there are solutions. And we continue to do that every day. We have over 280 members of state legislators that have chosen to serve on our board. We have 500 policy advisors have chosen to associate with the Heartland Institute because we want to promote the business of freedom. We want to make sure there are solutions out there. Every time a legislator says, how do I respond to the latest push for a big government program? The Heartland has been there, will continue to be there, we will continue to be there in Washington. And thank you for your support. I want to introduce a few folks first. We have a tremendous board of directors. And I did tell, we just had a board meeting last night. I've got a 12-year-old. Went home to tell Alex, I said, I want to let you know I talked to my boss yesterday. And he looked, you got a boss? I said, I got a board. And I respond, and I work for them. And first, I want to introduce the board members, and we'll hold our applause to the end because they dedicate their time, their attention, their desire, and their name on the board of the Heartland Institute because they're committed to freedom. And let's start first with a gentleman that, and I'll go through these pretty quickly. Joe Bass, of course, still serving on the board. Thank you, Joe. And we can clap for Joe individually. We're going to be doing that all night. Joe's here. We're going to hold the applause. We also have Bob Buford here. Bob's up front here. Bob, go ahead and stand up. I want him to see your face. Let's do that. Stay standing. We've got Chuck Lang as chairman of the board. Chuck is here as well. I don't know if Jerry Fabick is here, but I've seen him around. I don't think I have. Jeff Madden is up here as well. Where's Jeff at? Thank you. Paul Fisher serves on our board as well. Where's Paul? There he is over there. Harley Moody came all the way from Texas. Harley, stand up there as well. Dan Hales. Dan is here as well. Thank you for serving on the board. Brian Singer. There's Brian as well. And our newest board member, Hillary Till. Yeah. Thank you for serving on the board, lady and gentlemen. We had a tremendous meeting yesterday, and the difficulty is we have 3-hour meetings and try to summarize all the things we're doing. Some of my former colleagues say, what is it like being president of the Heartland Institute? I said, it is great. When we were in Congress, there were like 2 or 3 days out of the whole year we said, you know what, maybe we can make a difference on something. But I tell you, when you're working in 50 states, you're working in Washington, D.C., you're fighting for freedom even internationally in Europe, internationally, on a number of cases, it's not almost a week goes by that we have a huge victory for freedom. And that is a fantastic, and the folks, the way that makes that happen, I want every staffer of the Heartland Institute, if you work for the Heartland Institute, would you please stand up? You're in the back, wave. They're in the back, they're working there, they're doing tremendous work. Thank you for your work you do on behalf of freedom. What an amazing group of dedicated laborers in the Garden of Freedom. Now I want to thank those, our generous donors and sponsors, and we have a list on the table, but I want to make certain you understand that people care and are committed to the cause of freedom. First of all, Jerry and Marilyn Hayden, thank you for your support, and we'll go through these as well. Mr. Bob Buford as well. Brian and Linda Singer, Dr. Thank you. Dr. Herb Wahlberg. And we're going to stop here on Herb as well. Go ahead and stand back up, Herb. You can't just wave. Herb has served for 30 years on the board of directors at Heartland Institute. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Every meeting guaranteed ended in 3 hours or less. And that was the goal. Thank you, Herb, for your tremendous service, particularly his dedication to education and the future of our children. Dr. Harley Moody, thank you as well. He's a veterinarian. A little story about veterinarians, if I might be an aside. When I first ran for the state office in the state of Kansas, you were allowed to indicate what your preference was, what your title was, and I had a PhD in political science. I went to my dad. He really wasn't that political at the time. He became much more political as soon as I got in office. And I said, well, Dad, what do you think? Should I put on the ballot that I'm Dr. Tim Hulskamp? He said, oh, no, son. I said, really? Why not? He said, that would be an unfair advantage. What do you mean? He said, everybody will think you're a veterinarian. That is a true story. Thank you, Harley, for your work. Also, our sponsors are Chuck Lang as well, the current chairman. Thank you, Chuck, for sponsoring our table. Lawson Rokeby. Dan Hales, member of the board as well. Frank and Susan Resnick. Thank you for your support. Paul Fisher, a board member. Tom and Jan Sleater. By the way, Jan does tremendous work making sure that you don't give your money to the IRS, but you give it to the Heartland Institute through an IRA. Isn't that a great deal? You can help freedom and make sure Washington doesn't take your money. So Tom and Jan, thank you for your efforts there. Joe and Diane Bast as well. Erkstrack International. George and Joan Clues. Jim and Tina Johnston. I didn't mention Jim. He is a board member. I'm sorry. I don't think I mentioned Jim. Where are you at? There he is. Thank you, Jim. He also signs the checks, so staff, that's the guy you want to know. He is our treasurer of the Heartland Institute, so thank you for that. And Christian Josie, who does some tremendous work throughout the country. Appreciate his support. Also, Americans for Prosperity, an ally with Heartland. The Booker T. Washington Society, which does tremendous work. And I had a chance to visit with them and their great efforts. Citizens for Tom Morrison. I don't know if Tom Morrison is here, but Tom Morrison has been targeted by the left. Why? Because he does the right thing every day in Springfield for you. So, Tom, thank you for your work. You worked closely with Heartland over the years. Yes, round of applause for Tom Morrison. They sent a $400,000 check against him 2 weeks ago, ladies and gentlemen. He's in the fight of his life. Pastor Corey Brook, Project Hood. I don't know if Pastor is here. Thank you for your support. Tremendous. And also a Heritage Foundation. We had Becky Norton Dunlop all the way from Washington, D.C. to join us. Thank you for your support. Long partnership with the Heartland Institute. Thank you. Also have the Schaumburg Township Republicans. Thank you for your effort as well. Represent Alan Skilcorn and Walsh Freedom. And we'll hear a little more from Joe as well. West Suburban Patriots and our refreshments provided by Altria and courtesy of the Michelle Wine Estates as well. Ladies and gentlemen, a tremendous round of sponsor for all the donors to Heartland. Speaking of being a Heartland donor, none of what we do is free. It's free to our legislators. It's free to policymakers. It's free to all 7,300 policymakers and thousands of influentials across the fruited plain that receive our stuff. But I want to let you know, if you're not a Heartland donor, now's the time. Question is, what are you waiting for? For freedom to disappear completely, it would be impossible to recover. If you're looking for a better organization to support, and there are plenty of allies, but I will tell you, after 20 years in public office, 20 years at the state level and the federal level, we are unique. We are delivering the freedom message to every State of the Union, to every state legislator of both parties. We survey them every 2 years. They read our stuff. 70% read our publications. 33% say they're influenced by what we send them, by our ideas and our principles. And so nobody reaches more elected officials more often with greater free market freedom information than we do. And you'll hear a little bit later, but we need your continued support to continue to make a difference. We're here tonight to celebrate Joe and Diane. We're here tonight to celebrate freedom. And we're here tonight to continue to promote those principles we all love that built this country, and we're going to continue to move forward. So with that, continue your dinner. In a little bit, the Energizer Bunny, that is Joe Walsh, will be coming up here. I have not told you any stories about Joe, but if he pushes me later on, I will come back to the stage. So continue your dinner, and we will have a few-minute interlude. Thank you, and God bless you. Yes.
Everybody enjoy dinner, eat, don't let me. Hey, young man, sit down and eat your dinner. Don't let me disturb dinner. But we are going to bust into our program right now. It's great to be here. It's always great to come back to Heartland. Many people don't realize this. I worked at the Heartland Institute a long time ago. Joe and Diane put up with me a long time ago, and then they said, I've had enough of you, Walsh. Go to Washington and drive John Boehner and everybody else crazy. You'll meet a really cool congressman from Kansas, Tim Hulskamp. Give it up for Tim Hulskamp. I need to say this, and I'll be brief. Jim told me to get the crowd wound up, but only speak for about 4 or 5 minutes. Tim Hulskamp and I went to D.C. in 2010. We were part of that big class that took back the House from Nancy Pelosi. And for the record, Nancy Pelosi is about that tall. Of that class of 62 freshman Republican congressmen, I think it's safe to say and this is a badge of honor that Tim Huelskamp and I reflected upon nightly. Of those 62 Republicans, I don't think any two congressmen were more of a pain in the ass to our Republican Party and our Republican leadership than Speaker John Boehner, than Tim Huelskamp and Joe Walsh. I mean that, and that is a badge of honor because that's where Tim came from and that's where I came from. We went to Washington about 8 years ago because we wanted to make a difference. We wanted to make this country more free. It's difficult to do in Washington, D.C. Heartland Institute is an amazing organization. The Heartland Institute, in many ways, is Joe and Diane Bast, and we will spend plenty of time coming up talking about Joe and Diane because they are very special people. Two extremely special people that a lot of people really don't know enough about. We're going to change that tonight. Get ready, Diane. We're going to change that tonight. But I got to tell you, I watch a lot of Fox News. I do. I watch the Fox Business Channel. I watch Fox News. And look, if you listen to me on the radio, and a lot of people get mad at me, every day I go into my studio and it's good Trump, bad Trump. If Donald Trump does something good, I give him a big old bear hug. If he messes up, I slap him upside the head. I do. A lot of people on Fox News sing the president's praises night and day. I am so excited to hear Judge Andrew Napolitano speak here in a moment because everything he says on Fox, I believe he believes. And I don't believe that about everybody on the TV, and I don't believe that about everybody on the radio. Judge Andrew Napolitano gives it to you straight. And in these pretty crazy political times in which we live, that's a wonderful thing. So, enjoy dinner. Keep it down. We got a great program coming up, again, led by our keynote speaker. Let me read through his bio because you need to understand and hear his bio and understand what an impressive, cool life this young 34-year-old judge has lived. I got a smile out of him. Judge Andrew Napolitano is a graduate of Princeton University and the University of Notre Dame Law School. He's the youngest life-tenured Superior Court judge in the history of the state of New Jersey. He sat on the bench from 1987 until 1995. Judge Napolitano taught constitutional law and jurisprudence at Delaware Law School for 2 years, Seton Hall Law School, and Brooklyn Law School for 4 years. He returned to private practice in 1995, and thankfully for all of us, he began television work the following year. As Fox News' senior judicial analyst since 1998, Judge Napolitano broadcasts nationwide on Fox News and the Fox Business Network throughout the day, Monday through Friday. He's nationally known for watching and reporting on the government and the protection of, and this is why we're here, liberty, property, and economic opportunity. He lectures nationally. Give it up. You're going to hear it's in him. He's not just a pretty face on Fox News. It's in him. He believes in this stuff. That as well, in our politics today, is a rare thing. He believes in this freedom stuff. He lectures nationally on the United States Constitution, the rule of law, civil liberties in wartime, and human freedom. He's been published all over the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fake News, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, everywhere. His weekly newspaper column is seen by millions every single week. He's a nationally recognized champion of personal freedom. He's the author, the judge is, of 9 books, 9, on the United States Constitution, 2 of which have been New York Times bestseller. His most recent book, Suicide Pact, The Radical Expansion of Presidential Powers and the Assault on Civil Liberties, details a long sordid history of government and especially presidential encroachments on liberty enacted in the name of protecting America. I'm honored to introduce somebody that I have a lot of respect for, and I am most certain that everybody in the room does as well. Ladies and gentlemen, hey, join me in welcoming Judge Andrew Palatine.
Joe and Diane, in the history of the effort to advance personal, political, and economic freedom to all people, you, along with Dave Padden, surely have written a major chapter.
Joe and Diane, thank you for your leadership at the Heartland Institute, 30+ years, your leadership of the Liberty Movement in the United States.
Thank you, Joe and Diane, for your incredible work, not only with the Heartland Institute, but really moving the needle toward freedom and free markets for the planet.
Well, Joe, you've done a world of good for the cause of liberty, fighting so-called conventional wisdom with the real wisdom and the real truth.
Diane and Joe, thanks so much for the indefatigable work you've put into the Heartland Institute and all of the good that you've done to promote liberty.
Congratulations, Joe and Diane, on decades of accomplishment, achievement, and setting such a great example for all of us in the free market movement.
I have known Joe and Diane Bast since literally the day that they started the Heartland Institute in 1984, and I want to congratulate them for surviving the free market movement and getting out alive, as it were.
Joe Bast is one of the great policy entrepreneurs of all time.
Our mutual friend and board member Dave Padden really made the right choice when he picked Joe Bast to run the Heartland Institute.
David Padden hired Joe Bast, according to what David said, was that Joe was cheap. He was also very talented too.
There have been victories state by state at the national level because of what you've accomplished with and through the Heartland Institute.
They fought a battle for all of us and for all who come after us, and they deserve the warmest thanks and congratulations for that, and I give them on behalf of Hillsdale College.
Especially thank you for giving indigestion to all of the enemies of freedom in our country.
It's only logical that we should revive the bourgeois capitalist running dog lackey society. And we'll just call that Heartland for short.
And Joe, I don't know of anyone who surpasses you in your understanding of the principles of a free society and your and Diane's ability to transmit those ideas to what probably could have been millions of elected officials.
We need to clone you so we have thousands of you around the country.
Joe and Diane Bast have shown all of us the impact that a relatively small think tank based in the nation's heartland can have on the national and even global policy debate.
You've committed your lives to sound policy, and I hope that retirement doesn't mean that you disappear, that you'll be back in the game in one way or another, but also taking a well-deserved rest.
I wish them all the great joys in their retirement, and the legacy they've left at Heartland is something that we should all be most grateful and feel blessed about.
Well, they've built an institution. They've made it succeed and last, so much so that they can work their retirement through it, knowing that it will go on to work and success in the future.
We're going to miss you so much at Heartland, but enjoy retirement, and then why don't you come back in about 5 years?
So Joe and Diane, congratulations for everything that you have done to make Heartland Institute the powerhouse that it is today across the country.
Best wishes as you travel the waterways of the world.
The real reason why we're here. And let's start with this. And if it appears that I'm at a loss for words over the course of the next 4 to 5 minutes, not 45 minutes, 4 to 5, it's because I'm trying to describe in 4 to 5 minutes the recipients of the Heartland 28 Liberty Prize. And it's difficult to do. And it's difficult to do because I'm going to use a word here that just doesn't satisfy. Joe and Diane are very special people. That's a fairly mundane way of saying it. I mean, think about this. Nobody would be in this room tonight if not for Joe and Diane Bast. You know how all of the men and women who've worn the uniform, they don't want attention. And when we see a soldier, we want to thank that soldier for serving this country. And I know Tim probably felt the same way. When I was in Congress, every soldier I met, I would just automatically call a hero. And soldiers don't want to be called heroes, and soldiers don't want to be noticed. They do what they do. They did what they did. That's always struck me as Joe and Diane Bast. You know the record, right? We know the record. Heartland started in 1984. Joe and Diane co-founded it. Joe was like 10 years old. Diane, you were 4 years old. So long ago, so many books ago. I wrote down earlier today, no, that's a lie. I tried to write down today the output of Joe and Diane, the policy output, all the policy studies, all the reviews, all the books, all the newspapers. Tim talked about it. I mean, there's no other think tank in the country that has spoken to and delivered material to thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of state elected officials over the last 44 years. Did I get that right? 94, 04? 34 years, like the Heartland Institute has. You can't begin to describe the output that these two are responsible for. I think of the word dedication. How dedicated Joe and Diane Bast are. Because the work was everything. Joe doesn't like to speak. Diane doesn't like to be in front of a camera. I worked with them 20 years ago. Every single day and every single night, these two were obsessed with and dedicated to what the mission was. That output. Putting out the policy studies, putting out the books, putting out the newspapers, putting it all out there for one reason: to advance freedom. Never from the beginning of the Heartland Institute, and this, look, guys, this is 2018. This is such a unique trait. I don't have it. Most of us in this room don't have it. Ronald Reagan said it. So much good can get done if nobody claims the credit. These two, Joe and Diane, have never sought the limelight. Never. Never sought the limelight. And if I were sitting around a fire smoking a cigar with Joe Bass tomorrow night, he would deny all the impact these two have had when it comes to the environment, education, healthcare, climate change. On and on and on it goes. Everybody tells us, right? We've all had a mom or a dad, a parent, an aunt and uncle. Everybody has told us, you want to leave this planet. When you leave it, well, you do want to leave and you want to go somewhere. But when you leave this planet, when you leave this earth, you want to make it a better place. You want to leave it a better place than when you were here. Advancing freedom. I can think of no better mission. Judge Napolitano, I could listen to him for 5 hours. You talk about the founding. You think about what these men and women, but what these men and women were dedicated to at the beginning. This will sound terribly hackneyed, Joe and Diane Bast. The people I revere the most in this country are people who resemble the folks that Judge Napolitano talked about. Joe and Diane Bast have dedicated their lives to advancing freedom. They haven't asked for a pat on the back. They haven't looked for glory. They haven't asked for a thank you ever. They have dedicated themselves to their work. They're a team. They're a partner. It has always just been them. And again, I alluded when we began the evening that a lot of people, I think, don't understand Joe and Diane. I remember, Diane, when you and I were at some conference together when I was with the Heartland Institute, you looked at me and you said, Joey, because you called me Joey, to distinguish me from her husband. And you said, you're an odd duck in this think tank world. Because I like to smile and jump and talk and cheer and preach. And that I've always thought about that, Diane, because you and Joe were dedicated to that world, and you were dedicated to advancing freedom, no matter what. You talk about trying, and that's all we do. We try to leave this world a better place. I have learned so much from you two. Everybody in this room has learned so much from Joe and Diane Bast. Everybody over the last 34 years who's worked at the Heartland Institute has learned profoundly so much. But again, as I close, and I yank these two up here for a little bit of the limelight, the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of state and local elected officials all over this country the past 34 years who have been positively impacted by their output. They've always been about the output, advancing freedom. We would not be here without them. Let's give not yet, hold on, a rousing round of applause for two Americans who our founding fathers would toast. I give you the heart and the soul, certainly the brains, but the heart and the soul forever of the Heartland Institute. The 2018 Heartland Liberty Prize winners. Give it up for Joe and Diane Bast.
Well, holy cow. Holy cow is right. Before I start, I have just a couple of things that I had to write down because I don't do this kind of thing very often. Mr. Walsh, you were Joey because that is the way you always signed your letters. Not because I told you that, but you signed your letters that way. And I think over time you became a congressman and actually kind of got better at that and grew up, and now you're Joe Walsh, and we're very proud of you, very proud of you, greatly appreciate it. I can't even tell you how amazed I was at the video. Thank you so much, Andy and Keely and Jim and everyone at Heartland who put that together, because it was absolutely fabulous. Joe and I are really honored to be the 2018 recipients of the Heartland Liberty Prize. As Mr. Walsh said, I really don't feel like I deserve this honor. Given the people who went before us, Dave Padden, chairman of the Heartland Institute, the founder of the Heartland Institute, Ed Crane of the Cato Institute, Bob Poole of Reason Foundation, Morton Blackwell of the Leadership Institute, all of the leading lights of the freedom movement have received this award, and I really don't feel like I belong in that sort of upper echelon. But as has happened often over my life, I get to bask in Joe's glory. It's good. I mean, this has been happening to us since we were both in high school, and he was a two-time state debate champion, and I was only a one-time state debate champion, and he reminds me of that on a pretty regular basis. But that's okay, because I've always felt more comfortable as sort of a behind-the-scenes kind of a person. Maybe the person at Heartland who would help the organization put Joe's vision into place. And that I really felt that was sort of my role at Heartland. He's always been about the forests, kind of the big picture sort of thing. I've always been about the trees. I want to make sure that everything is lined up the way it's supposed to be lined up. So before I turn things over to Joe, I just want to thank the thousands of people who have donated to the Heartland Institute over the years and really made this organization possible, who were with us through thick and thin. I want to thank all of our think tank colleagues who did that enormously amazing video. Grace Marie, I can't see you because of the lights, but thank you so much for being here and being part of that video. We really, really appreciate it. I want to thank all of you here in the room who have done so much tonight to make this evening so special. It really is pretty remarkable. And then for my part, I also want to thank 4 specific Heartland, sort of behind-the-scenes people, and definitely behind-the-scenes people. Without them, I am quite sure that I would have gone insane before this honor could be given to me. And those 4, Latrice, Wanda, Keely, and Justin, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being there for us. And speaking of my heart, here's Joe.
Amazing. We thought this was going to be a 5-minute ceremony at the very end of this event, not a big elaborate deal like this. So thank you to the board of directors and to the staff of the Heartland Institute for choosing us. There's a lot of people doing outstanding work in defense of individual liberty and limited government. They're not all as good looking as Diane or as handsome as I am, but it's supposed to be a talent competition and not a beauty pageant, right? But it really is special, and we really appreciate it. The video was astounding. Just reminds me all the people that we have met over the last 34 years and worked with, Grover Norquist and all of these people, and they're just outstanding people who have devoted their lives to the freedom of others. And I think that is a really high calling. I think maybe other than entering the priesthood, devoting your life to protecting other people from the tyranny of others, I think is the highest calling that you can have. So it's a real privilege to be able to devote your life, to actually make a career out of doing something like that. So I stepped down as president of the Heartland Institute in July of 2017, last year. I stepped down as CEO in January of this year. And I did that because I didn't want to overstay my welcome. Free market think tanks don't have a good record for orderly successions. So the Cato Institute and the Heritage Foundation had their difficulties when I think their presidents wanted to hold on a little bit too long. So we didn't want that. So we put a lot of time into coming up with a plan for an orderly succession. We did an extensive national search for a new president and CEO, and we found Tim Hillscamp. And I want to tell you tonight, Tim is doing a fantastic job. Tim, you are just absolutely... Transitions are difficult. They are so easy to mess up. And if any of you have had small businesses, you know what it's like trying to find a successor, trying to keep the organization going, trying to allow it to go in a different direction, not stifle the creativity of whoever's going to take it over. It's a difficult balancing act to do. And I think the board of directors through all of this has been just outstanding. They took the responsibility seriously and did an excellent job. And we got lucky. We got lucky to find a guy like Tim Hillscamp who had exactly the right attributes and skills, connections, and talent in order to make this organization succeed and go to the next level, which is what we really hope for. So thank you, Tim, and I hope you guys all support Tim Hillscamp and the Heartland Institute going forward as generously and unselfishly as you have supported me and Diane over the last 33 years. I wanted to mention we have two people in the room who got Heartland Liberty Prizes in the past, and that's Jim Johnston and George Clues. I'm not going to be able to see you guys through the light, but yeah, Jim Johnston is back there. And George is back there as well. In 2000 and 2001, so far 23 people, including Diane and me, have received Heartland Liberty Prizes. 23 people, which I think is enough to form a football team, right? Is that right? Yeah, unless you have Ethan Hillscamp on your team, then you only need 21 players. So I'd also like to point out some founding members of Heartland's board of directors. So 34 years later, Jim Johnston and Craig Allen. Craig, where are you sitting? Craig is right here. Yep. There we go. So founding members of Heartland's board of directors, you guys were terrific. It was already mentioned that Herb Wahlberg is here. Herb was chairman of the board for 24 years. Herb. Mike Padden and Nancy Barrett are here. I know Mike is there, yeah. Their dad, Dave Padden, 34 years ago, gave me the chance to be the executive director of a new organization. Dave Padden was amazing, absolutely amazing. He was a principled libertarian, yeah. It was his vision, it was his integrity, his character. I mean, this was a guy who was a hardcore libertarian, and everybody believed him and followed him and respected him just because they knew this guy had an outstanding character. He was honest, faithful to his wife. He was a community leader. He was a generous guy, a successful businessman, the kind of person that everybody else looks up to. So Dave passed away just 7 years ago, October 2nd, 2011. I wish you were here to see this. I think it really would have been a special moment for him. Chuck Lang is now the chairman of the board. Tim introduced all the board members and thanked them. I want to repeat that. No organization can be stronger than its board of directors. No organization can outlive its board of directors. I mean, that's just a fact. And every quarter, when the Heartland Institute has a board meeting, I go to these board meetings. I told Tim this yesterday, which is why he kind of maybe mentioned it earlier today. But after every board meeting, I would go back to the staff and I say, we get to work 3 more months. Okay? Our bosses, the board of directors, has overviewed what we've done and have given us permission to continue for 1 more quarter. But the real boss of this organization was never Joe Bast, it was never Joe and Diane, it was a board of directors. And because it's more than one person, it can outlive any one of us. So it's my hope 10, 20, 30 years from now, there's still going to be a Heartland Institute, even after Tim Huelskamp is retired, because it has a board of directors of really committed, generous individuals who are willing to keep it going. We need more board members. There are some people in this room who would make outstanding board members. I want you to think about doing that. Some of you have board experience. Some of you are retired. Some of you are looking to make connections in the libertarian or conservative movement. Joining the board of directors of the Heartland Institute would be a good fit for you. Contact me, contact Tim, or any of the Heartland staff here and ask us about it. We need more members of that board in order to continue it. One last thing. Pat Peterson was the Heartland Institute's first development director. He was the first guy. When I got hired, I retained Pat. He was always an independent contractor working on straight commission to raise money. Heartland would not have lasted 6 months without Pat Peterson. He's the only guy who was raising money. And he did it unselfishly and very hard and very well for a decade. He's now in California, but Tim Peterson is here. Tim is somewhere in the room. Stand up, Tim. And there we go. Pat is in California. We talk pretty often. He couldn't make it here tonight, but Tim, let Pat know that we had a shout out to him. This award is as much for him, for the board of directors, for the staff of the Heartland Institute, and for all of the donors and friends of the Heartland Institute as it is for Diane and me. So thank you very much and have a great evening.
Stay there.
We gotta stay here.
Stay. Nicely done.